Following England's slim recent victory against Wales, in today's video I'm going to be giving each individual player a score out of 10 based upon their performance in the game. Now, one thing you'll see in this video is although Wales were on the losing side of the result, they may have higher scores than some of the English players, as it's not dependent necessarily on the result. Now, if a team wins by a significant margin, obviously they're going to have higher player ratings, but when you get close games like this, often the losing team can actually overshadow some of the winning players. Now, I'm going to start off with the English front row. Now, I'm going to give Joe Marler a 5, Jamie George a 6, and Will Stewart a 6. The reason Joe Marler is that on the lower of the score compared to the other two is I believe the other two contributed in the set piece well, but when it came to around the park and their running game, Joe Marler didn't really impress me in that regard. I thought Will Stewart made some impressive ball carries and Jamie George did his fair share of carrying. So that is why Joe Marler is slightly lower. Moving into the second rows, I have given Maro Itoje a 6 and George Martin a 5. Now, I thought Itoje in the latter stages faded quite considerably, and his penalty count, as we usually expect with Itoje, increased, giving away a couple silly penalties. The reason he's higher than George Martin is I did think Itoje took some responsibility in the latter stages of the game, especially when it came down to the match-defining line out, 5 metres out from the Welsh line. Itoje called it and ended up going over for the score himself. So I believe he showed good leadership and stepped up in the latter stages. George Martin, very mixed performance. Same again against Wales in Cardiff the week previous. He never really imposed himself on the game. He's a very big player and I want to see a little bit more from him. However, he did the dirty work very well, cleaned out the rucks and made an impact that way. Now, moving on to the back row, I'm giving out a lot of 6s at the moment. I'm giving Laws a 6, Ben Earl a 7 and Billy Vunipola a 6. Now, I thought Courtney Laws, when it came to line-out time, was very good. He managed to disrupt a couple times and around the park he was generally good, although I do expect more from Courtney Laws with his level of experience to make a few better ball carries and get England on the front foot a little bit better than he did. Potentially the reason he wasn't was the cohesion in the England team wasn't really there. He was sort of going in on his own. He didn't have any latches to get him over the gain line. Ben Earl is the highest scorer so far. I believe he offered some great energy around the field, made some good carries, and he just looked enthusiastic and energetic. Especially when it came to kick chases. Late on in the game, George Ford put the spiral bomb right up in the air for Liam Williams to chase, and Ben Earl managed to get into Liam Williams' eye line and disrupt and then get the turnover. So Ben Earl showed good energy throughout. Billy Vunipola, he played a considerable role in the English first half, making quite a lot of ball carries, even though it wasn't for much distance. Billy got 61 minutes under his belt, which coming off of an injury is very impressive, and it was good to see him in general not come off with an injury. Now, speaking of injuries, we are moving on to the backs with Jack Van Poortvliet. Now, it's very hard to grade a player when they've come off injured, but I'm just going to give him a middle of the road number 5. Now, prior to his injury, the pace of ball wasn't at the level that I'd expect and would like. Farrell could have done with the ball a little bit earlier on some occasions, so Jack Van Poortvliet is given a 5, and this is now the end of his World Cup journey. So I do feel for him, and hopefully he can come again further on in the year, or maybe early into next year. Now, Owen Farrell, I've given him a 3, the lowest scorer so far. Now, I actually thought Farrell was good in the first half, in terms of he took the ball at pace sometimes, and he looked like something was going to happen in that England back line. But he did kick the ball away in some areas in the field, such as the Welsh 22, which I thought we could have done with going through some more phases. Maybe this shows that he doesn't have quite the same confidence in the backs as he'd like to. And obviously the Owen Farrell red card, definite red card, and he's not really learnt from his tackle school and other previous offences. So very disappointed that Farrell will now have what I presume to be a lengthy ban, which is really disappointing considering he's the England captain. Moving on into the back line. Elliot Daly, I have given a 6. He impressed me a few times with a couple weaving runs, utilising some of his footwork to beat some Welsh defenders. But I thought some of his kicks were relatively poor. I remember one kick on the left wing, he hooked it right in field and left Liam Williams to counter-attack, which is very dangerous. So a bit of a mixed game from Daly. Now into the centres, I have given Ollie Lawrence a 5.5. Now, I thought Lawrence was good in terms of the ability to get England over the gain line, but I thought there was a couple drop balls from Ollie Lawrence, and considering what I'd expect him, based upon his club form, I did expect more from him. As I said, he did make some good carries, especially off line-outs, but the cohesion between Farrell, Lawrence and Marchant really wasn't there, and I felt that let the team down slightly. Joe Marchant, I have given a 5. Once again, like Cardiff last weekend, he showed some good line speed in defence and made some good tackles, but going forward, considering his attacking prowess for Harlequins, he's really not turning up in the way I'd like to at England. Now, I'm not putting that totally down to him, because as soon as you've got a misfiring inside centre, sometimes it completely limits your opportunities as an outside back to play rugby. But I did expect more from him, considering how good offensively he is for Harlequins. Now, another 3 is for Henry Arundel. Now, Arundel went off with a yellow card very early on in the game, which I felt disjointed England and stunned some of their momentum. Now, the yellow card was simply just a ridiculous yellow card. Just Liam Williams taps and goes, and he just tackles the player. Didn't let him run 10 metres, didn't even let him run 2 metres. So just completely lost his head. And considering he's a gamble for Steve Borthwick to be included in the squad, I expect him to turn up a little bit better than that and show what the reason he is in the squad for, which is brilliant attacking rugby, his footwork, his speed, and he's really not shown that yet for England. Freddie Stewart, I'm going to give a 4. Now, despite also getting a yellow card for what was a silly incident, probably not as silly as Arundel's, as when the ball's in the air, sometimes things can go wrong, but he took out Josh Adams in the air and got yellow card, and England conceded a penalty try. The reason he is above Arundel is, I do believe, earlier on in the game, because that event came later on in the second half. Earlier on in the game, he did show some good aerial skills, as we expect from him, and he's one of the main attackers in that England backline on kick receipt, where another player catches it, passes it to him, and he always offers a direct carry, which you have to commend him for. Now, moving on to the Welsh, I'm going to give, in the front row for Wales, Thomas a 6, Lake a 5, and Francis a 6. Now, both teams exchanged scrum penalties, which is why there's not that much discrepancy between the English and Welsh props. With Dowie Lake at number 2, the line-out was a little bit dysfunctional, and he also went off for a pretty bad injury by the looks of it. The same as JVP, Jack Van Portfleet. I'm not going to talk about him too much because he didn't really give an opportunity to show what he's about. I did think he offered some great tackling, and he did look physical in the early stages, especially in defence, so maybe that score could be a little bit higher. Now, into the second rows. Now, Wales had a couple line-out issues. Well, I say a couple, I think they lost 5 line-outs in the game, so look, I'm going to give both the locks a relatively middle-of-the-road score, as I do believe they take quite a bit of responsibility for the line-out. Now, they've not the scores aren't too dissimilar to the English second rows, as the English line-out wasn't exactly 100% functional either, so both teams can take a couple positives and negatives from the line-out, so that's why the Welsh second rows are around the 5 points. Now, moving on to the Welsh back row, this is where things start to improve a little bit for Wales. I've given Lydia a 7, Tommy Raffel a 6.5, and I'm going to give Plumtree a 5.5. Now, Lydia once again shows his brilliant defensive displays, brilliant chop tackling, and was one of the main reasons Wales kept England scoreless in the first half. Tommy Raffel, a little bit lower than Lydia. I did think he was good in the game. I thought he got around the park well with a high work rate. I think he conceded a couple penalties and a yellow card in the game, so that drops his score down slightly. Now, the reason he's the highest scorer of all the yellow cards is because his work rate was immense, and the yellow card wasn't really as cynical as the likes of Stewart's and Arundel's, as it was simply just a mistake. Now, Plumtree, a player which I had never seen play rugby before, he started off the game with a 50-22, which for a number 8 is out of this world. You never usually see that. He got a turnover and then stick the foot through it. Not sure how much accuracy was actually involved. I think it was more of a hack, but nevertheless, it got a 50-22. I did think Plumtree, outside of that, the reason for him being a low scorer was he made some quite poor handling errors when Wales were on offence, which sort of slowed down the Welsh momentum. So, yeah, a very mixed game for Plumtree. Now, moving on into the back line, Thomas Williams, I am giving a 9. I thought Thomas Williams was immense in the game. I thought he's a brilliant presence, sniping presence around the ruck. The pace of ball was much more superior than the likes of JVP and Ben Youngs when they came on, which gave Wales a real spite in the attack. Now moving on to the fly half jersey, another Williams, which there are plenty of in this belt in the Welsh back line. We're going to give Owen Williams a 5.5. In my opinion, he never really featured in the game. I thought Biggar took more control when he came on, and Owen Williams, he shook his head going off the field. It wasn't a bad performance, but in terms of forcing your way into that Welsh World Cup squad, he would have liked more from himself. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. Maybe it was a 6. I think he kicked reasonably well, but I'd like to see a little bit more from him. Now moving into the 11 jersey, we've got Rodgers with 6. Relatively quiet game for a lot of the Welsh outside backs. Offensively, some good defence from a lot of the Welsh backs. I'm going to give Rodgers a 6. Ran some reasonable lines. He looked okay, but he certainly didn't light the pitch on fire. Now moving into the centres, I'm going to give Tompkins a 6 and Roberts a 6. Defensively, relatively good. Tompkins is known for his little footwork at the line, trying to beat defenders, but I thought Lawrence got the better of him in a couple defensive passages. Tompkins never really imposed himself on the game. Likewise, Roberts, relatively quiet game. Maybe I was watching too much of England and not enough of Wales. If you do think that, let me know what the adjustments for these scores should be in the comments. But yeah, I thought Roberts was relatively quiet as well. Now moving on to two of the best performers on the field in my point of view, I'm going to give Liam Williams another 9, maybe even pushing a 9.5, and Josh Adams an 8.5. Now, Liam Williams and Josh Adams were the two decisive players for Wales in this game. Josh Adams with the high ball catch that drew out the penalty try and that sent Freddie Stewart into the sin bin. Josh Adams competed for that ball, caught it well, and if Freddie Stewart wasn't there to interject with the foul play, would have 100% have been a try. So great work from Josh Adams and showing he's still got some real class there. And yeah, he's not really dipped in form. He's been a consistent performer for Wales. Liam Williams, actually, I'm just going to adjust it. I'm going to give him a 9.5. Liam Williams is always the player that turns up for Wales. Incredible player, one of the most brave rugby players. He started off the game with a beautiful missed pass. He took a big hit from one of the English forwards, but got the pass away and sent Wales down the touchline. I think that might have been Rodgers down the touchline. He also interjected in the game and stunned the English attack with a brilliant turnover. England looked for all money like they were odds on to score, but Liam Williams got over that ball, got the turnover, showed some brilliant jackling from a fullback you don't really see. So Liam Williams was instrumental in that game. I'd give man of the match to the Welsh, either Thomas Williams or Liam Williams. I'm going to give Liam Williams the man of the match award. I thought he was exceptional in that game, and I thought if Wales were to go on to win, he deserved man of the match. And I don't always disagree with man of the match going to the winning team, especially in a close game, whereas I thought Liam Williams on the pitch as a whole was a standout performer. Now, in terms of the English team, I would have given the English man of the match to Ben Earl. I think he did actually get man of the match for the game, which makes sense as he did show some good energy throughout. But for me, Liam Williams is the man of the match. Now, that concludes this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please do let me know in the comments what score adjustments you'd make and who was your man of the match. I'll be very interested to see what you have to say, and I'm sure we can have a discussion about it in the comments. So, yep, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.